Okay, we're at the very end of Yud Amud Beis, the beginning of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. So the Mishnah had said, kamatz, that if a person does kmitza, v'ala biyadei tzrar, and instead of just getting flour, he also gets a pebble, a garger melach, or a piece of salt, a karet levina, or a karet is like a piece of frankincense, puzzle. In all these cases are puzzle. So the Gemara wants to know, kol hani lamali, what do you need all these cases for? It's basically telling you the same thing, which is that if you get something other than flour, it's a problem. What do you need all these? So the Gemara says, you need all of them for the following reason. Itan tzrar, if it just taught a pebble, that if you do kmitza and a pebble comes in, that it's puzzle, I would say mishum delav basakrabihi. I would say a pebble is puzzle because it's not burnt on the mizbeach. Aval melach de basakrabihi, but salt, which is added to the carbon and burnt on the mizbeach, maybe it's not a problem. V'itan melach, and if it taught the case of salt, I would say then it's puzzle, because the salt is not part of the mincha, right? In the mincha, you take the bowl and you place in it the flour and the oil and the levina. The salt is then added when it's about to be burnt. It's not part of the carbon itself. Maybe that's why it's a problem. Ava levina, but frankincense, the ikva bahade mincha meikara, which is part of the mincha, maybe it's not a problem. Kamash malan. That's why it's like building up pebble to salt to even frankincense. Now, the Mishnah had said that the issue with having all these things is that it's less than the shear. The shear is the size of a kmitza, which we'll see is, let's say, it's each kain's hands, and there's a way to do it, as we'll talk about in a moment. And if you have a pebble or frankincense or salt, it's minimizing the shear. So now it's not a full kmitza of flour. It's 99% of flour and a little bit of those ingredients. So the issue is that it diminishes the shear. So the Gemara says, forget about the shear. What about chatzitza? Meaning, you're saying the issue is the shear. But even if it wasn't a shear issue, let's say you were allowed to, be a little less or a little bit off with the shear. Isn't it a chatzitza? Chatzitza means that you're supposed to have entirely one item, right? If you go to the mikveh, right, and there's something in your hair, it's a chatzitza. So you're supposed to have just flour, and if you have a little bit of a rock or frankincense or salt, it's a chatzitza. It serves as a chatzitza because it's separating between one piece of flour with the next piece of flour. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you, there's a case where it's not a chatzitza issue, but it's still a problem of deficiency, and that is if it's mamash on the side, meaning it's not inside it's not in between the hand and the flour, and it's not in the middle of the flour, so it's really not serving as any chatzitza. It's mamash sticking on the out. Let's say, think of it as like a ball, and it's sticking on the side. So because it's on the side, it's not a chatzitza, but the problem is the deficiency. It's the minimizing from the amount. Amalei Abaye l'Rava, Kitza comes in. How do you do kmitza? How is it done? So Amalei Kede Kamtzi Inchi. So Rabbi said to Abaye, as people scoop things. Now, Abaye understood that to mean that you use all 5 fingers, mamish like a giant handful. Eisvei Abaye Stakasha, the Brisa goes through each finger and describes the name and the halachic significance. So it starts at the pinky, Zuzeres. The pinky was used for the size of the choshen. It was measured based on that finger's width. It should be long, and the choshen was that long and that wide. It was using the zeres. Zu kmitza, and then you have the 4th finger with the kmitza, which is the ring finger, and that was used for the kaimitz. Now, by the way, stop right there. You see the kmitza was not all 5 fingers. The kmitza, the end of the kmitza of the mincha was using the ring finger, and we'll address in a second. Then you have the middle finger zu amma, and that's used by the amma. When you're measuring an amma, you use the middle finger in the measurements. Then you have the pointer zu etzba, and that's relevant to the kohen dipping his finger. He uses that for the zrika. And the thumb is the goydel. The goydel is used for the mitzvah. They put the oil and the blood on the thumb of the mitzvah. The point is, you see from here that you don't use all 5 fingers when you do the kmitza. You end with the ring finger. So the Gemara explains what Rava meant when he said you scoop the way people scoop is a lahashvos. What Rava meant is that the little finger is used to level. So you originally start with all 5, and then you use the pinky levels out. The pinky sort of you use the pinky, you move it up and down, and then to get rid of any excess flour, and then all you're left is exactly 3 fingers amount of kmitza. So heichi of it, how is it done practically? So Amar Rav Zucha bar Tuvi Amar Rav Chayfa Shalosh Etzbos. You take 3 middle fingers and you you sort of curl them. But the picture I'm using a zoom might help a little bit. You don't just tighten them, but rather you sort of extend them all the way to the end of the palm so that they get as much surface area as they can. Until you reach the palm, the kaimitz, and you scoop up. Natane Mehachi, the Brisa similarly states that it's the three middle fingers that are used, and the thumb and the pinky clear out the side. Maloi kumtsai, a full kaimitz. Now Yachal Mabayra team, I think it should be overflowing. Tam lember kumtsai. Kumtsai is within the hand. Iba kumtsai, but if you just have kumtsai Yachal Barasha, it's spicef. I would think that maybe you don't extend the three fingers fully. You just like tighten it, and then it's just, literally in the fingertips. Tam lember maloi kumtsai haketzad chayf shalosh spicef pas yadu kumtsai. You extend the three fingers as far as they can, and then they scoop up as much as they can. Now, the kaimitz was done generally with flour, but with the machvas and marcheshes, it was actually done, those are pre-baked, and then you sort of have to break it apart with your fingers. So that's actually, it's crumbled before the kmitza. So that's actually very difficult, because you still have to have the perfect amount of kmitza, not too little, not too much, nothing sticking out. And it's not fine flour, it's pre-cooked, so it's like crumbled, so it has like pieces in it. You see, normally you don't really need the fingers to clear it out because it's just flour, it'll fall away. But when it's already pre-baked, you need the pinky and the thumb will clear away any of the excess that's sticking out. It's the hardest avoid in the Beis Hamikdash, because you need to perfectly, right? If there's like a big piece and the pinky knocks it off and like a larger piece leaves, that's a problem. It has to be perfect, but it was already crumbled, so it's pieces. It's very, very difficult. So says the Gemara, that's the hardest thing in the Beis Hamikdash. That's it. What about malika? If you remember in Zvachim, it talked about how the kohen holds the wings and the legs. It's very, very difficult. But chafina, what about chafina, which is, it was the process of Yom Kippur where the Kohen Gadol basically would take two scoops. He would basically take his hands in like you're about to drink water from a river, mamish, both hands like this. And he would use his teeth to pick up a ladle full of ketores and pour them into the hands. So that's a very difficult thing to do as well. So why is this the most difficult? Aren't those also difficult? The answer is Zuhi achas me'avodas kashrut. It doesn't mean it's the most difficult. It's one of the most difficult things in the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Gemara, Amrav Papa, Pshitali maloi kumtzai kedekamsi inshi. It's pasha to me that maloi kumtzai is the way people are done. What does this mean? What it means is like this. The way Rashi explains that when you're doing the kmitza, you scoop again the three fingers. We're not talking that we all agree with. But you put your hand sort of by the side. You don't put your hand palm facing down and scoop. You sort of scoop the way people scoop, which is you put your hand sort of like slicing through on the side, and then you pull up the three fingers with. So by Rav Papa asks a kasha, what if you scoop it differently? Kamatz barashit spaisav. Instead of moving your hand from the side, you go palm down and scoop up like a claw, like that. Or minat stadim. That way Rashi explains what it means is, what if instead of scooping, you push your hand down flat into the flour until the flour fills the cup, your hand, and then you go up. Or mimata l'mayla mai. So that means it's very similar, but instead of putting your hand flat into the flour, you put your hand at an angle down and then scoop up. So all those things, they're not the normal way to do it. Teiku to Shiloh, we don't know. Oh, okay. The Gemara continues, Amrav Papa, Pshitali. Now, the similar Shiloh that he just had about doing the kmitza in an abnormal way, and he ended with a teiku, the Gemara is going to have a similar back and forth regarding the chafina. Again, the chafina was the Kohen Gadol had 2 hands worth of ketores. So Pshitali, there was actually 2 stages. One is that he would originally take 2 hands worth and put it into the ladle, and then he would take it from the ladle and pour it back into his hands. But we're talking about the original one. So it's 2 scoops worth. So Molei Chafni Inshi has to be done in the normal way. By Rav Papa is a kasha. The normal way to do it is like this. You take 2 hands, that each one facing palms up, and a little bit separated from each other, and then you put them together and you scoop up. So by Rav Papa, Chafan Barasha is Mau. What if he did palm facing down, or minat stadim, or what if he did it from the sides? So that means that again he pushes down and then the ketores fills his palms. Or chafam bazu bazu v'kivrin zu ritzizu. Or what if he did two separate ones, then he puts them together, meaning he fills palm A and he fills palm B, and then he puts it together. Teiku, not sure. Boy Rav Papa, another shayla. You take the kmitza and then you put it into a kli. So davke l'koimetz bedafnei demanamai. What if instead of placing it at the base of the kli, he sticks it to the side of the kli? Taich kli be'inan ve'ika. Do we say, well, it's in the kli, so you're yotze, so it's fine. Or it has to be placed in the normal way, which is at the bottom of the kli. Teiku, not sure. A similar shayla, by my baravashi. What if he puts it in the base of the kli, but he actually takes the kli, inverts it, so it's upside down, and sticks it at the top. So it is in the base of the kli, but the entire kli is upside down. Do we say, well, it's at the base of the kli, and that's what you wanted? He's that guy, and he's that guy. It has to be in the normal way, which is the kli shares facing up, not upside down. And therefore you're not yaitza, teiku, not sure. Okay. Mishnah, Ketzad oisa, how is kmitza done? Poishet et spoisav, al pasiyada, you extend the fingers over the palm of the hands, as we've already discussed. Now, each mincha had a certain amount of oil. Now, generally, the amount of oil is a lug. So, riba shmeina, if you had too much oil, or chasa shmeina, or too little oil, or chisa levina. So oil was a lug, so too much or too little is a problem. And the levina was always a kaimitz. Kaimitz was a measurement. Chisa levansa, and if you had too little levina, too little frankincense, less than the kaimitz is puzzle. Okay, the Gemara will analyze exactly how much you have, how much you need. Okay. Heichi dami riva shmeina. What's an example of too much oil? So, pashut shot is, I'm supposed to bring a lug of oil from home. Instead, I brought a lug and a half. That's a pashut shot. For some reason, the Gemara goes a much more complicated case. The Gemara says, "So Amar Rav Elazar kegan shehifer shlosh shnei lugin." The case is where instead of just adding too much oil from home, he brought two lug and designated two lug as the carbon. Meaning, instead of just he brought a little bit extra, he for whatever reason brought two lug and was makdish two lug as the carbon. So the Gemara wants to know, that's the only time, and let's say he wasn't Magdish tu lug, he just happened to pour in too much oil originally. Not that he was Magdish tu lug, but he poured in too much oil originally. Says the Gemara, Velukma, why don't you just say a much more common case? You're going to Arev b'shemen techulim b'shemen techaverta. Let's say a case where he mixed in too much, is less than two lug, just a little bit of extra oil from home. Or he took a carbon, oil for a separate carbon, put it from here. Why does it have to be that? It has to be two lug from home. Two lug that he's magdish for the carbon, l'chora, even if he took, it sounds like it has to be two lug dafka, and if it was a little bit extra, why does it have to be that case? It says the Gemara, and if you say that taka, if he put a little bit of excess oil from home, and wasn't magdish, two lug, then it's fine. It's only a problem of two lug. Here's the issue. Let's say you put shemen on a minchas chayte, which is not supposed to have shemen. It's a problem. Then how is it ever invalid? If you tell me it has to be two lug, there is no two lug by the minchas chayte. And if it's just you telling me a little excess from home is not a problem, so what's going on over here? So the Gemara answers the truth is it's all a problem. The answer is Rabbi Elazar loy mi boy kamer. Rabbi Elazar was trying to say a bigger chiddush. Loy mi boy dechun dechaver to the puzzle. Of course, if you added a little excess from home, it's a problem. Of course, if you took oil that was set aside for a different carbon, it's a problem. His chiddush is of hifer shnei lugin. The cases where you designated two lug. You could argue two lug, each lug, right? You two lug bottles, magdish both from home for the carbon. I could argue each one is roy for a carbon b'fnei atzmai. So maybe it's not a problem. Meaning, of course, if you just put in a lug and a half, it's an issue. And of course, if you took, a little bit excess from home, of course, it's a problem. The chiddush is you brought two lug, and you're magdish each one. Now, each one, bifnei atzmai, could be used. And you poured it all together. I might think that that's okay. Kamash Malan. Umnalu Rav Elazar. How did Rav Elazar know that it's indeed a problem? The answer is Amarav Masis and Kashise. Ma'ir Tani Riba Shamna. Let's say Riba Lashemen. It's the fact that it said Riba Shamna increased its oil. What do you mean increase its oil? Just say too much oil. What does it mean increased its oil? It means that you took each bottle was enough to be its oil, and it's still a problem. Okay, then the Mishnah said if you have too little levaina, it's a problem. Now, how much levaina are you supposed to have? You're supposed to have a kaimitz. Too little is a problem. Now, how too little? Let's say a kaimitz is 5 ounces. How little is it an issue? So Tan Rabbanan chasra. It's machlokes. There's 3 opinions. Chasra v'amda al kairid echad psula, al shnei karatin kshera. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says it has to have 2 kairit. Kairit is like a piece. You have to have 2 pieces. You could be less than a kaimitz. It's still kosher. You're supposed to start with a kaimitz, l'chachila kaimitz. But if you go less, it's not possible. Like let's say a kaimitz is 5 ounces. 4.9 is not possible. You have to have 2 kairit, 2 pieces. Less than 2 pieces is a problem. Rav Shimon says, go to the next page. Rav Shimon says, even 1 kairit's enough. Less than a kairit is a problem. So like a half a kairit. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you need 2 kairit. According to Rav Shimon, you just need 1 kairit. Vatanya, Amar kaimitz levan shechisa kol shu possible. But wait a minute, isn't there a brayso that says anything less than a kaimitz is a problem? So you told me that Rabbi Yehuda says 2 kairit, which is much less than a kaimitz. Rav Shimon says 1 kairit, which is even less. I thought any deficiency is a problem. The answer is Tani Kairit Levain Shechisa Kol Shehu Puzzle. I'm sorry, Rav Shimon Omer. This is a kasha because this brayso was authored by Rav Shimon, and this is Kaimitz Levain Shechisa Kol Shehu Puzzle. It says that if the kaimitz is anything less than a kaimitz is a problem. Now Rav Shimon, you just said as long as it's a kairit, it's okay. But now he's saying if it's less than the kaimitz, it's a problem. So which one is it? Less than the kaimitz is likely 5 ounces. A kairit is, let's say, 1 ounce. So the brayso says less than a kaimitz, which means 4.9 is an issue. But he said less than a kairit is a problem, meaning less than 1. So which one is it? The answer is Tani Kairit Levain Shechisa Kol Shehu Puzzle. Change the girsa. Instead of kaimitz to a kairit, less than a kairit is a problem. But less than a kaimitz is fine. V'ba yisema, or a different answer. That really they both could be true. Rav Shimon can say less than a kaimitz is a problem, and Rav Shimon can also say less than a kairit is a problem. Again, a kairit is a piece, a kaimitz is a larger amount. And the answer is kan b'levayin haba mincha, kan b'levayin haba b'fnei atzmai. The answer is very simple. If the frankincense is coming accompanying the mincha, which is the standard frankincense, then even less than a kaimitz is fine. As long as it's a kairit, you're fine. Kairit is the significant. But let's say instead of the frankincense that's associated with mincha, let's say you want to donate as a korban bifnei atzmai just frankincense. You see, the frankincense usually comes as a side dish to the mincha. For that, if it's the side dish, it could be less than a kaimitz. As long as it's a kairit, a tiny amount is fine. But let's say you donate a levaina as the korban bifnei atzmai, that you're designating the kaimitz, the levaina, I'm just donating frankincense as its own korban. For that, you need a full kaimitz. Anything less than a kaimitz is an issue. Says the Gemara, Amr Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef Rav Yechanan, he reviews this. Shalish machlokes b'davar, there are 3 opinions. Rav Meir savar kaimitz b'tchila v'kaimitz b'soif. Rav Meir says you have to start with a kaimitz levaina when kmitza is performed, and you have to end with a kaimitz levaina. Meaning, you need a full kaimitz of levaina, anything less is a problem. Rav Yehuda savar kaimitz b'tchila v'shnei kratim b'soif. Rav Yehuda says no, you have to start with a kaimitz in the beginning, but even if you end up with just 2 kairit, it's fine. That we had before. Meaning everyone agrees you have to start off with a full kaimitz of levaina. The machlokes is if some of it gets spilled on the floor, it gets lost. But you can't just show up with one little particular, a little piece. You have to start with a kaimitz, the 5 ounces, whatever. The shaila is if it goes down, is it a problem? So Rav Meir says anything less than a full kaimitz is a problem. Rav Yehuda says 2 kairit is enough. And then Rav Shimon says savar kaimitz b'tchila v'kairit echa b'soif. Rav Shimon says, no, 1 kairit is all you need. Start with a kaimitz, end with a kairit. And they're all based on the same pasuk. Because the pasuk is, V'skol halvayna asher lamincha. And any levaina that's on the mincha, you have to burn. It means all the levaina has to be there. You start with a kaimitz, end with a kaimitz. Very simple. Rav Yehuda says that you need 2 kairit. Is kol afilu chad kairit. Kol means even 1 kairit. S is another kairit. So kol and S is kairit 2 karatim. And Rav Shimon S l'darshan. Shimon doesn't darshan S, so the kol is 1. Meaning, Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon say the pasuk is saying you start off with the full kaimitz, but even if you just have 1 or 2, it's enough. Am Rabbi Yitzchak, Am Rabbi Yosef, Am Rabbi Yechanan, Machlokes. The Machlokes is Levain Habar Mincha. The whole Machlokes of how much you need is for the Levain of the frankincense that is coming with a mincha. That's the side dish. But if you're dealing with a Levaina that is brought bifnei atzmai, we had this before, that if you actually just donate a levaina to be burnt on the mizbeach as its own carbon, then everyone agrees you need a full kaimitz. So that's Rav Yechanan saying that the whole machlokes is dafka when it's with a mincha, but if it's its own carbon, everyone agrees you need a full kaimitz. And again, the machlokes is for the levaina that's coming with a mincha. You see, there was also one more time that we dealt with the levaina, and that were the 2 spoons that were with the lechem aponim. Right? That there's the standard mincha that comes with levaina, and then there's the lechem aponim, the showbread that had 2 spoons. Those 2 spoons cannot be deficient at all. The levaina that's in the spoons that are placed on the shulchan with the lechem aponim, you need a full 2 kaimitz, a kaimitz on each spoon. Anything less is a problem. I mean, the whole machlokes is the standard mincha that comes with levaina. That is machlokes, 1 kairet, 2 kairet, full kaimitz. But the spoons, you need a full share. Says the Gemara, Pshita, isn't it pasha? Why would I think that the levaina could be missing and still be valid by the lechem aponim? The answer is mouth. The same keeping behind the lechem aisya kasher al mincha damya kamashon. You might think that the spoons of the frankincense with the lechem aponim is like the levaina with the regular mincha. Kamashon, no, it's not, and anything less is a problem. Pliki v'Rav Ami v'Rav Yitzchak nafcha. There's a machlokes. Chad Amar, one opinion says machlokes b'levaina b'mincha. The whole machlokes of Yudin and Rav Shimon is for the levaina that goes with the mincha. But regarding the levaina, if it's brought as its own offering, everyone agrees you need a full kaimitz that we had before. And one opinion says no. The same way they argue about 1 or 2, 1 kairet, 2 kairet, when it's brought with a mincha, they argue the same thing when it's brought bifnei atzmai. That if the levaina is brought bifnei atzmai, they also say the same thing. That they would be mekel if it's less than the shear. Chisa leveinasa psula. If the levaina is deficient, diminished, it's possible. Hayatik sheir. Wait a minute. The whole issue of the Mishnah is if you have too little levaina, but the implication is if you have too much levaina, that's fine. I've hatani yata psula, but wasn't them the prices say that if you increase the amount of levaina, it's also a problem? So is it a problem or not? Rabbi Bar Chama kan shehefer shel shnei kamatzin. The answer is if you designated 2 kamatzin, that's a problem. That's too much. But less than 2 kaimitz is fine. Let's say you designate 2 kamatzin levaina. This is a completely different view. This, as we're going to see in a moment, this is a different view entirely. Now, if let's say you designate 2 kamatzin levaina, and you lose one of them before the kmitza, it's fine. And according to this opinion, Rabbi Bar Chama, you have to have the full shear. Now, what's the definition of a full shear? Well, normally it's 1 kaimitz. If you designated 2 kaimitz, then you need to bring 2 kaimitz. And if you have less than 2 kaimitz, it's an issue. But what if you designated 2 and lost 1 before the kmitza is done? Then it's fine. The kmitza is what sets the amount. If at the time of the kmitza you designated 2 kaimitz of levaina, then you need 2 kaimitz of levaina. Meaning, let's say you need 5 ounces of levaina to be yaitz the mitzvah. You decided to bring 10. According to Rabbi Bar Chama, fine, but you have to bring 10. If you end up with 9, that's a problem. Except if you lost 9, if you, let's say, went down to 9 before the kmitza is done, then it's fine, because the kmitza is what sets it. Whatever the amount that you have by the kmitza, that's the amount you have to burn on the mizbeach. Acher kmitza hukva. But after the kmitza, it's set. And therefore, meaning, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Amar Rabbi Chama, he actually continues that opinion. The 2 kaimitz is an issue because it's too much. If you designate 2 kaimitz levaina for the mincha, but you lose one of them before the kmitza, then it's fine. Because I thought you can't have too much. The answer is the definition of too much is defined by the kmitza. If at the time of the kmitza you had already lost the excess, then you're fine. If you had the excess at the time of the kmitza, then it's an issue. The kmitza is all that matters. Similarly, let's say you put 4 spoons of the levaina by the lechem aponim, The same thing, that's too much. The answer is, if you lose 2 of them, so you're back to the shear, you're fine, as long as you lost them before the kmitza is done. Similar halachas. The question is, Hasu lamali, hainu hach, why do you have to repeat? It's the exact same halacha, which is, you donated too much, which is generally a problem, but you lost the excess before the kmitza is done. Then it's fine. After the kmitza is done, then it's not. Then it's an issue. Same thing with the spoons. If you designate 4 of them before the spoons are removed, and you lose 2 before the spoons are removed, you're fine, because that's the right amount. If you had all 4 when the spoons are removed, then it's an issue. It's the exact same halacha. So the Gemara says, "Ma'u the same kivan debaraka mitzidei kivan shegi is man leparka command prikadam kamash malan." The chiddush is the spoons. You might think that because the spoons are separate, right? By the average mincha, what's significant is the kmitza. That's what sets it, because the kmitza sort of clarifies this is the amount that's set aside as the carbon. But when it comes to the spoons, they're already separated. They're already set apart. So you might think having too many spoons is a problem, or too much frankincense on the spoons is a problem, and the removing of the spoons is irrelevant, because you could say, well, the spoons are already separate. I already see them. I already know them. If you put too much there, then it's an issue. Even if you lost some of it before the spoons are removed, I could see that being an issue. Kamash malan, no, it's the exact same halacha. What sets it and defining as too much or too little is going to be by the average mincha, the kmitza, and by the shulchan, it's the removal of the spoons. I will stop here.